Saturday morning arrived in Willow Creek Estates under a guise of perfect suburban peace. Judge Abernathy, anticipating a day of quiet respite, stepped out of her home, ready to leave behind the week's courtroom battles. But the expected serenity was instantly fractured. Where her vintage Thunderbird should have been parked on her driveway, there was only empty space. A stark white notice, aggressively out of place against the manicured perfection, was attached to her mailbox, the Willow Creek Homeowners Association logo starkly visible. A chill of foreboding replaced Eleanor's anticipation. Approaching the mailbox, she detached the notice. The heading, "Notice of Vehicle Towing," confirmed her unease. Beneath it, the officious text detailed the supposed infraction. Vehicle, vintage red convertible. Violation, parking infraction. Location, 14 Willow Creek Lane. Her address. Her driveway. Parking infraction? The absurdity stung, a blatant contradiction of reality. The notice continued with vague accusations, unapproved vehicle type, driveway usage guidelines, and the final insult: vehicle towed by Apex Towing Services. All fees are your responsibility. Fees for having her car stolen from her own property. Outrage, sharp and immediate, ignited within Eleanor. This was not a mere inconvenience, it was a deliberate act of injustice, cloaked in bureaucratic language. Driven by a need for immediate answers, Eleanor retreated inside to retrieve her phone, her movements precise and purposeful. Dialing the HOA number, she waited, the ringing amplifying her growing anger. Beatrice Humphrey, HOA president, answered with a voice dripping with forced cheer. Willow Creek Homeowners Association, this is Beatrice, how may I brighten your day? The saccharine tone grated against Eleanor's rising fury. This is Judge Abernathy, Eleanor stated, her voice a controlled force, each word clipped and authoritative. I am calling about the illegal towing of my vehicle from my driveway this morning. A momentary pause flickered in Beatrice's cheerful demeanor, before it snapped back, falsely bright. Oh, Judge Abernathy. Yes, the vehicle relocation. We anticipated your call. Relocation, a blatant euphemism for theft, Eleanor thought, her disdain growing. Relocation is a dishonest term, Ms. Humphrey, Eleanor retorted, her voice laced with ice. My car was stolen. From my driveway. Based on a fabricated violation. Beatrice chuckled dismissively. Stolen is dramatic, Judge. It was addressed to maintain community aesthetic standards. Repeated violations, you see. Vague accusations devoid of substance designed to frustrate. Violations of what? Eleanor's voice rose, controlled but edged with steel. What specific rule did I break by parking on my own driveway? Beatrice's cheer faltered, replaced by bureaucratic defensiveness. Judge, the HOA has guidelines. Driveway usage. Vehicle types. Older vehicles can impact curb appeal. Curb appeal? A shallow, almost laughable justification for such an egregious act. Guidelines? Show me these guidelines, Eleanor demanded, her patience evaporating. Cite the specific rule I violated. Beatrice stammered, mentioning Community Handbook, Section 4, driveway parameters, a jumble of jargon offering no real justification. Are you dictating what car I park on my property? Eleanor pressed, disbelief sharpening her tone. Beatrice retreated further into bureaucratic platitudes. HOA acts in the community's best interest. Maintaining property values. Harmony. Harmony through illegality? Eleanor scoffed, her contempt palpable. Harmony by acting like petty tyrants, violating property rights? Beatrice's tone hardened, the cheerfulness vanishing entirely. Apex Towing has your vehicle. Contact them. Fees are your responsibility. The audacity was breathtaking, the injustice blatant. Eleanor's controlled fury solidified into resolute action. Ms. Humphrey, she said, her voice dangerously quiet, you have made a grave error. HOA stands by its actions, Beatrice retorted, a flicker of defiance returning. Procedure followed. Documented violations. Documented violations that are non-existent, Eleanor corrected sharply, her voice like ice. Illegally towing a judge's car is a profound miscalculation. She disconnected, the sharp click echoing her unwavering resolve. Standing in her study, overlooking the empty driveway, Eleanor felt a steely determination settle within her. This was no longer just about a car, it was about principle, about justice, about challenging petty tyranny. Willow Creek Estates was about to face the full force of her legal acumen. They will regret this, she murmured, the promise hanging heavy in the air. The suburban peace was shattered, replaced by the gathering storm of Eleanor's resolve. Fueled by righteous anger and unwavering resolve, Judge Eleanor Abernathy wasted no time in formulating her counter-strategy. The blatant illegality of the HOA's actions was not just an affront. It was a legal misstep of colossal proportions, and Eleanor, a seasoned veteran of the justice system, knew precisely how to exploit it. Her quiet Saturday had been hijacked, but it would now be dedicated to meticulously dismantling the Willow Creek HOA's audacious overreach. Her first action was decisive and characteristically strategic. Leaving the unsettling emptiness of her driveway behind, she returned to her study, a sanctuary of legal texts and carefully ordered files. At her antique mahogany desk, the morning sun casting long shadows across the polished surface, she began to draft. Not a frantic email nor a heated phone call, but a formal legal demand letter. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, years of legal drafting experience translating her outrage into precise, legally airtight prose. The letter was addressed to Beatrice Humphrey, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, and copied to Apex Towing Services. It was a masterclass in legal intimidation, outlining in stark, unflinching terms the illegal towing of her vehicle, the baseless pretexts cited by the HOA, and the clear violation of her property rights. She meticulously dissected the HOA's vague accusations of unapproved vehicle type and driveway usage guidelines, demanding immediate and unequivocal citation of the specific bylaws or regulations allegedly violated. She challenged the legality of any HOA rule that presumed to dictate the type of vehicle a homeowner could park on their private driveway. The letter didn't stop at simply demanding the return of her Thunderbird. Eleanor's demand was unequivocal: immediate return of her vehicle, complete reimbursement of all towing and storage fees, and a formal written apology from both the Willow Creek HOA and Apex Towing Services for their unlawful actions. Furthermore, it served notice of her intent to pursue all available legal remedies, including but not limited to injunctive relief, damages for trespass and conversion, and punitive damages for the HOA's egregious and malicious conduct, should her demands not be met within 24 hours. The tone was icily professional, devoid of emotional outburst, yet radiating an unmistakable undercurrent of judicial authority and unwavering resolve. With the demand letter drafted, Eleanor shifted her focus to gathering information. A seasoned judge knew that solid evidence was the bedrock of any successful legal action. Her first target was the Willow Creek Homeowners Association itself. She accessed the county's public records database, initiating a search for all publicly available documents related to the HOA, its articles of incorporation, bylaws, meeting minutes, and any recorded covenants or restrictions. She wanted to dissect their legal foundation, to identify any procedural irregularities, any weaknesses that could be exploited. Next, she turned her attention to Beatrice Humphrey. A quick online search revealed a surprising lack of public information. No professional profile, no social media footprint of note. Almost as if Beatrice Humphrey existed solely within the confines of Willow Creek Estates and the HOA. This anonymity struck Eleanor as unusual, piquing her curiosity. Why such a deliberately low profile for the HOA president? It hinted at something hidden, something worth investigating further. Apex Towing Services was her next point of focus. She looked up their business registration, noting their address and registered agent. A quick search for online reviews revealed a pattern of complaints, accusations of predatory towing practices, excessive fees, and aggressive tactics. A picture began to form in Eleanor's mind. Apex Towing was not just an innocent bystander, but likely an active participant in questionable, if not outright illegal, towing operations, possibly in collusion with HOAs like Willow Creek. As she delved deeper into her initial investigation, a growing unease settled upon Eleanor. The more she uncovered, the more Willow Creek Estates seemed less like a haven of suburban tranquility and more like a meticulously controlled, almost Stepford-esque community, governed by an HOA wielding disproportionate and potentially unchecked power. The lack of transparency surrounding Beatrice Humphrey, combined with Apex Towing's questionable reputation, hinted at something more complex and potentially more sinister than a simple overzealous enforcement of community aesthetic standards. While Eleanor was immersed in her digital investigation, her phone rang. It was Beatrice Humphrey. Eleanor answered, her voice coolly professional, anticipating either a capitulation or, more likely, continued bureaucratic resistance. Judge Abernathy, Beatrice's voice began, the saccharine cheerfulness replaced by a brittle, defensive tone. I am calling in response to your communication. Eleanor noted the carefully chosen word, communication, not demand letter. They were already on the defensive, downplaying her legal action. My demand letter, Ms. Humphrey, which I trust you have read thoroughly, Eleanor interjected, her voice leaving no room for misinterpretation. Yes, well, the HOA has reviewed it, Beatrice continued, her tone dismissive. And we stand by our actions. As I explained, your vehicle was in violation of community guidelines. The same vague, unsubstantiated claims repeated like a mantra. Guidelines you have yet to produce, Ms. Humphrey, Eleanor countered sharply. And, community guidelines do not supersede the law, or my fundamental property rights. Let me be unequivocally clear. Your illegal towing constitutes theft, and your continued refusal to return my vehicle will only compound your legal liability. Beatrice's voice took on a sharper edge, the bureaucratic veneer cracking further. Judge, with all due respect, the Willow Creek HOA is a well-respected organization. We have bylaws, rules, regulations. We operate within our rights to maintain community standards. Rights are not unlimited, Ms. Humphrey, Eleanor retorted, her voice hardening. And community standards cannot justify illegal actions. My demand is clear. Return my vehicle, reimburse all fees, issue a formal apology within 24 hours. Or face the consequences. Beatrice scoffed, a dismissive sound that betrayed a flicker of nervousness beneath the bravado. Consequences? Judge, are you threatening the Willow Creek HOA? Eleanor's voice remained calm, yet carried the unmistakable weight of judicial authority. Ms. Humphrey, I am informing you of the inevitable legal repercussions of your unlawful actions. Consider it not a threat but a guarantee. She paused, letting her words hang in the air. The clock is ticking, Ms. Humphrey. 24 hours. And with that, Eleanor ended the call, the click of the disconnect echoing her unwavering resolve. The initial salvo had been fired. Now she waited to see if Willow Creek HOA would understand the gravity of their misstep, or if they would foolishly escalate this conflict into a full-blown legal war. Eleanor was ready for either outcome, her legal mind already several steps ahead, anticipating their every move, and preparing her next counterstrike. The 24-hour deadline Judge Eleanor Abernathy had laid down for the Willow Creek Homeowners Association and Apex Towing Services ticked away with deafening silence. No contrite calls, no apologetic emails, no sign of her vintage Thunderbird reappearing on her driveway. The defiance was palpable, an arrogant disregard for her demands that only solidified Eleanor's resolve. If they believed they could ignore a judge's ultimatum with impunity, they were profoundly mistaken. Their silence was not just inaction, it was a declaration of war, and Eleanor was more than ready to engage. As the clock struck the 24-hour mark, Eleanor, seated once again at her mahogany desk, initiated the next phase of her meticulously crafted strategy. The demand letter had been a warning shot. Now it was time for the heavy artillery. With a decisive click, she finalized the digital document she had been preparing, a formal lawsuit against the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, Beatrice Humphrey in her official capacity as president, and Apex Towing Services Incorporated. The lawsuit was a legal tour de force, a meticulously constructed document that mirrored Eleanor's sharp legal mind. It meticulously laid out the facts, the unlawful towing, the lack of any legitimate legal basis, the violation of her property rights, and the emotional distress caused by their high-handed and illegal actions. The claims were robust and multifaceted. Trespass to chattels for the unauthorized removal of her vehicle, conversion for the wrongful exercise of dominion and control over her property, injunctive relief demanding the immediate cessation of such unlawful towing practices and the return of her Thunderbird, and finally, punitive damages, seeking to punish the defendants for their malicious and oppressive conduct, and to deter similar actions in the future. Each count was supported by concise yet compelling legal arguments, citing relevant property law, HOA regulations, or rather the lack thereof applicable to her situation, and precedents for unlawful towing and property rights violations. Eleanor, with her years of judicial experience, anticipated every possible defense the HOA might attempt and preemptively dismantled them within the body of the lawsuit itself. It was a legal offensive designed to be not just victorious, but devastatingly so. With the lawsuit finalized and electronically filed with the Harris County District Court, Eleanor turned her attention to the next crucial step, formal service of process. She contacted a reputable process-serving agency, ensuring that the lawsuit and summons would be personally delivered to Beatrice Humphrey at her Willow Creek Estates address, and to the registered agent of Apex Towing Services at their business location. She wanted to ensure there could be no claims of ignorance or procedural missteps. They would know unequivocally that they were now facing a full-blown legal battle. The process server, a seasoned professional named Marcus, understood the urgency and the importance of discretion. By mid-afternoon, Marcus had confirmed successful service on Apex Towing. Serving Beatrice Humphrey, however, proved slightly more dramatic. Marcus recounted later that upon arriving at Humphrey's Willow Creek residence, a precisely manicured but somewhat sterile-looking house, he was met not by Beatrice herself, but by a sharply dressed, vaguely threatening-looking man who identified himself only as HOA security. Despite the man's attempts at intimidation and obfuscation, Marcus, unflappable, insisted on personal service and eventually managed to hand the lawsuit directly to a visibly flustered Beatrice Humphrey, who appeared at the door looking pale and distinctly less saccharine than she had on their earlier phone call. News of the lawsuit spread through Willow Creek Estates with the speed and intensity of a wildfire. The meticulously maintained lawns and facade of suburban harmony were suddenly disrupted by whispers, concerned phone calls, and hushed conversations behind closed doors. The seemingly invincible Willow Creek HOA, and its president Beatrice Humphrey, were now facing a direct legal challenge from one of their own residents. And not just any resident but Judge Abernathy. The HOA, initially defiant, was forced to react. Within hours, a terse, dismissive statement appeared on the Willow Creek Estates community website, attempting to downplay the lawsuit as a minor disagreement, initiated by a resident, unwilling to abide by community standards. They asserted, without providing any specifics, that they had acted entirely within their rights and in accordance with HOA bylaws, and expressed confidence that they would prevail in court. It was a public show of bravado designed to reassure residents and project an image of unwavering authority, but Eleanor, reading between the lines, detected a note of underlying nervousness. Behind the scenes, Eleanor knew the HOA would be scrambling. They would be consulting with legal counsel, frantically reviewing their bylaws, and attempting to shore up their defenses. She anticipated their next move would be to hire a high-powered law firm, likely specializing in HOA disputes, to represent them. Let them spend their residents' dues on expensive lawyers, Eleanor thought, a grim satisfaction settling within her. She was prepared to outlitigate, outmaneuver, and outlast them at every turn. As dusk began to settle over Willow Creek Estates, casting long shadows that distorted the perfect symmetry of the landscape, Eleanor received an unexpected email. It was from an anonymous address, with a cryptic subject line, Willow Creek Secrets. Intrigued, and with a growing sense that this was becoming far more than just a dispute over a towed car, Eleanor cautiously opened the email. The message was brief, almost cryptic, but it sent a jolt of cold anticipation through her. Look beyond the bylaws, Judge. Willow Creek is not what it seems. Beatrice Humphrey is not who she seems. Attached was a single low-resolution photograph, a grainy image of Beatrice Humphrey in a setting Eleanor didn't recognize, engaged in a conversation with a man whose face was deliberately obscured. The email offered no further explanation, no context, just this enigmatic warning and unsettling image. Suddenly, the perfectly manicured facade of Willow Creek Estates seemed to crack, revealing glimpses of something darker, something hidden beneath the surface of suburban perfection. And Judge Abernathy, never one to back down from a challenge, especially one steeped in such intriguing mystery, knew that her fight had just become significantly more complex, and considerably more compelling. Judge Abernathy stared intently at the grainy photograph attached to the anonymous email, the cryptic message, Willow Creek Secrets. Beatrice Humphrey is not who she seems, echoing in her mind. The image, though low resolution, showed Beatrice Humphrey in what appeared to be a dimly lit office, engaged in an intense conversation with a man whose face was strategically turned away from the camera, only his sharply tailored suit and distinctive silver cufflinks visible. The setting was nondescript, lacking any clear identifiers, yet it exuded an air of clandestine meetings and hushed deals. Eleanor felt a prickle of intuition. This was not just about petty HOA rules. Something far more significant and potentially illicit was at play within Willow Creek Estates. Driven by her innate sense of justice and a judge's unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth, Eleanor redirected her investigative efforts. The lawsuit was in motion, the legal machinery grinding forward, but the anonymous email suggested a deeper, more insidious layer to the conflict. She started by enhancing the photograph, utilizing forensic software she occasionally used in complex cases, hoping to glean more details about the obscured man and the setting. The enhancement yielded limited results on the man's face, but sharpened the background enough to reveal a distinctive piece of artwork on the wall behind Beatrice, a stylized, modern sculpture that looked vaguely familiar. A meticulous search of Willow Creek Estate's architectural blueprints and community center records finally provided a match. The sculpture was a unique, commissioned piece displayed in the HOA's administrative offices that were supposedly inaccessible to residents without specific authorization. The photograph, therefore, had been taken inside the very heart of the Willow Creek HOA's operations, suggesting an inside source, a whistleblower perhaps, willing to risk exposure to reveal the truth. Armed with this new piece of the puzzle, Eleanor delved deeper into Beatrice Humphrey's background, this time focusing on financial records and HOA transactions. Requesting and subpoenaing HOA financial statements as part of her lawsuit, Eleanor began to meticulously analyze years of expenditures, looking for anomalies, irregularities, anything that deviated from standard operating procedures. Days turned into nights as she pored over spreadsheets and bank statements, her legal acumen dissecting the financial labyrinth of Willow Creek Estates. The breakthrough came late one evening, amidst a mountain of financial documents. Eleanor discovered a series of undocumented expenditures, categorized vaguely as community improvement projects, but lacking detailed invoices or vendor information. These expenditures, totaling a significant sum, were authorized solely by Beatrice Humphrey, without the usual HOA board approvals or transparent bidding processes. Tracing the flow of these funds led Eleanor to a shell corporation, registered offshore, with no discernible business operations other than receiving large sums of money from Willow Creek HOA. And guess who was listed as the shell corporation's registered agent? The man with the silver cufflinks, subtly visible in the anonymous photograph, finally identified through corporate records as Marcus Thorne, a known figure in real estate development and, more ominously, individuals previously investigated for financial fraud. The picture snapped into sharp, damning focus. Beatrice Humphrey, the seemingly innocuous HOA president, was not merely overzealous. She was engaged in a sophisticated scheme to embezzle HOA funds, using Apex towing to generate spurious violations and fines, and funneling money through shell corporations with the help of shady characters like Marcus Thorne. The community aesthetic standards and driveway usage guidelines were not about community harmony, they were a smokescreen for corruption, a tool to exert control and extract funds from Willow Creek residents. The courtroom showdown arrived with the dramatic flair Eleanor Abernathy was known for. The Harris County courtroom was packed, Willow Creek residents filling the gallery, their anxiety and anticipation palpable. Eleanor, representing herself, stood against a phalanx of high-priced lawyers hired by the HOA and Apex Towing, Beatrice Humphrey and the Apex Towing representative, a slick, corporate lawyer named Mr. Sterling, sitting stiffly at the defendant's table. Eleanor began her opening statement with calm precision, laying out the facts of the illegal towing, the baseless violations, and the HOA's arrogant defiance. Then she shifted gears, unveiling the results of her investigation, piece by damning piece. She presented the financial records, the undocumented expenditures, the shell corporation, the connection to Marcus Thorne, and finally the anonymous photograph, now enlarged and projected onto a screen for all to see, Beatrice Humphrey in clandestine meeting with Thorne. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Beatrice Humphrey paled visibly, her carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of Eleanor's evidence. Mr. Sterling, Apex Towing's lawyer, attempted to object, to deflect, to discredit Eleanor's findings as hearsay and speculation, but Eleanor, with her years of courtroom experience, expertly parried every objection, citing irrefutable documentary evidence and drawing devastating inferences. Beatrice Humphrey, called to the stand, initially maintained a facade of bewildered innocence, claiming ignorance of any financial irregularities and insisting the towing was solely about upholding community standards. But under Eleanor's relentless, laser-focused cross-examination, her carefully constructed lies began to unravel. Eleanor presented email exchanges, bank records, and corporate filings, each piece of evidence tightening the noose around Beatrice's carefully concealed scheme. Finally, confronted with the undeniable proof of her illicit activities and the damning photograph, Beatrice Humphrey broke down, confessing to the embezzlement scheme, admitting that Apex Towing was a willing partner in generating false violations in exchange for a cut of the illegally obtained funds. The courtroom was silent, save for Beatrice's choked confession. Justice had not only been demanded, it had been spectacularly served. Judge Eleanor Abernathy had not only reclaimed her Thunderbird and secured a formal apology and full reimbursement, but she had also exposed a deep-seated corruption at the heart of Willow Creek Estates, liberating her community from the grip of petty tyranny and financial exploitation. The verdict was swift and unequivocal. judgment in favor of Judge Eleanor Abernathy on all counts. The Willow Creek HOA and Apex Towing were ordered to return Eleanor's car, pay all fees, issue formal apologies and pay substantial punitive damages. More importantly, the court ordered a full forensic audit of the Willow Creek HOA's finances, and mandated the immediate removal of Beatrice Humphrey from her position as president, with potential criminal charges pending based on Eleanor's presented evidence. In the aftermath, Willow Creek Estates underwent a profound transformation. The HOA was reformed, bylaws were rewritten to prevent future abuses of power, and transparency became the new norm. The sterile perfection of the community seemed to soften, replaced by a more genuine sense of neighborliness and trust. Judge Eleanor Abernathy, hailed as a local hero, found her Thunderbird returned, gleaming as brightly as ever on her driveway, a symbol of her unwavering resolve and triumphant fight for justice. Sitting in her garden, the scent of her roses now imbued with the sweet fragrance of victory, Eleanor knew her quiet Saturdays might still be occasionally interrupted, but they would now be lived in a community truly grounded in justice, fairness, and the hard-won peace of knowing that even in the most manicured of suburbs, truth and justice could prevail against the shadows of greed and corruption. Her gavel, usually reserved for the courtroom, had struck a resounding blow for her own community, proving that justice, like her vintage Thunderbird, was timeless and always worth fighting for. And that concludes the dramatic tale of Judge Eleanor Abernathy and her fight for justice in Willow Creek Estates. A story of standing up for your rights, uncovering hidden corruption, and achieving a resounding victory against the odds. If you enjoyed this story of legal intrigue, community secrets, and a judge who knows how to wield justice both in and out of the courtroom, then hit that subscribe button. Join our community for more compelling narratives packed with suspense, unexpected twists, and characters who aren't afraid to fight for what's right no matter the odds. You won't want to miss our next dramatic story. Subscribe now and stay tuned.